Hey everyone, it's Alan over at Cobblers Plus again, and today we're going to be working on a pair of ladies Briant Atwood. Well, not a pair, but a single shoe actually. We've got this little problem here. I know this is one of those things that ladies are fairly familiar with, at least some of you out there, but hasn't been really shown the process and steps that it takes to fix this. So today we're going to show you that, so come join us and check it out. Alright everyone, so these heels here for the ladies, they have a tendency to snap a lot of times, mostly because if you end up leaning back on the heel or if you get stuck somewhere, this happens fairly frequently. Thankfully this is one of those that it just came apart on the back end here. The actual heel base here is intact completely, so we're not going to have any kind of issues. That does become an issue when this heel base ends up cracking or snapping somewhere in half, just because with the small pin right here and there's very little weight distribution, in other words, on the material, there's no way of fixing that. It has to be completely replaced, and then becomes more of a challenge trying to hunt down a proper heel base that fits. But when it just breaks like that, again, the heel base is completely intact, and so we just need to be able to re-secure it. And first things first, gotta open it up. We're going to get inside underneath this insole here. So we've got that leather insole underneath. You can see that logo a little bit from the brand. But underneath, we have to pull the insole up just enough to get access underneath. And it's kind of hard, obviously. I can't show you on camera what it looks like getting underneath there, but kind of like that. There's all that foam there, and unfortunately the foam always ends up wanting to rip. Now finally, we're able to get in here with the heel pry, and that I could possibly show you a little. Usually this little small cover piece, like that right there. Sometimes they're leather, sometimes they're a different material. This is some kind of like almost fiberglass type material that they put underneath to cover those screws right there. And the screws, you can see them on the outside here. That's what kind of holds everything in place and secures it nicely. Some companies, especially some of the cheaper ones, they actually use a very large staple instead of the screws. A good quality pair of shoes typically use a set of screws like that, and they could range anywhere from just one screw, which is a little bit larger in width, to sometimes even 4 screws that we see. But 3 screws that are kind of like a small to medium size are perfect in my opinion. But obviously this thing came apart still, because you can see right there those holes, they just got shredded and stripped. And it's mainly because these screws are just a tiny bit too short, and obviously you don't want to put long ones in, otherwise you have a piece of a nail sticking out or screw sticking out of the side, and so making them too long is an issue as well. But in this case they ended up just a tiny bit too short. So I'm going to get in here with the drill, take out these screws here just like that there. They're not too bad of a length, but could be also that needed a wider one too. 2 and 3. There we go. Now that we've got that out and they're out of the way, not going to be poking me or anything while I dig around through here. I'm going to get some of this little plastic off of here that we don't want just laying around all over the place underneath. Could end up misaligning everything. There we go. Now our next step is to fill in those holes right here, because obviously they are stripped. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the adhesive that we use, and we use also very fine shoe dust powder that has a chemical reaction. It hardens in such a way where it's actually the same consistency as what this plastic is, and it actually almost melts into the plastic, in other words, so it fuses it all together, so it doesn't act as just a regular filler, because the chemical reaction heats it up so much. This little bit of plastic will melt into the mixture that we're putting it in, so it's going to turn out perfect for that. So let's go ahead and get that going. Alright, so I've got my fine shoe dust. There are different, obviously, grades of it. This is the really fine stuff that we don't have much of usually, but we always try to save it for jobs like this, because using certain other types of epoxies, they don't have that chemical reaction occur, and we really want that chemical reaction where it heats up between the adhesive here and the fine dust, where it basically slightly melts the plastic. Now obviously it's not going to melt it and make a bigger hole or anything, it's just going to melt into the plastic a little bit and fuse together. So before I do that, my first thing is I'm going to take just a little bit on the tip of this knife here, get it into that hole just a little bit, spread it out. It's not much at the first layer that I'm putting in, because this is kind of just the first little bit. Use my poking tool to push that in just a little bit. Blow off some of the excess there. Now I can use this here. Okay. Now I gotta be quick because the chemical reaction happens very, very fast. So at this point I'm just gonna have to be scooping real fast, putting it in. Grab my poker here, push it on through. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna knock the rest of this into the trash here, any of the loose dust here, because there is some adhesive mixed into it already, and we don't want to put it back in here, otherwise it hardens it. Okay, do this one more time, and it's basically just layers of it going in here. We're about to do one of the parts I really don't like, because the last bit of it you have to press in with the fingers, and I could use a glove, but unfortunately the glove gets stuck and everything, but we have to try to push this around with the fingers. And what I meant by that chemical reaction, it gets very warm fast and burns a little bit on the fingers, but we need to be sure that these holes are filled in. I'll take my poker real quick one more time, poke around in there. Alright. Well, looks like it didn't burn me too much, but I did get a little bit stuck to my fingers. Cobbler fingers here. We've got acrylic paints, some dyes on there, and now some shoe dust. To blow it off. There we go. Now I'm just going to leave this for a few minutes. The chemical reaction that occurs, it's very fast, and we don't need to really leave it sitting overnight or anything like that. It's basically technically dry at this point, but I'm going to give it just a few more minutes to kind of cool off, because now we're going to get in there and just lightly sand it out by hand, because you can see right there we've got the holes filled in, but it's a little lumpy, and no one's going to feel it. It's not going to misalign anything, but we still want to clean it up a little bit just in case, worst case scenario, something goes wrong and it gets in the way, and we don't want that to happen. But typically this step of sanding we're not going to need to do. But let me clean this up. I got to clean up my tools just a little bit because it gets stuck to the tools sometimes, and we'll see you back in just a minute. Alright, so we'll give it a few minutes, well, about a minute to maybe a minute and a half while I cleaned up just a little, and now I can go ahead and sand it up just slightly. Now during this step I'm using 120 grit sandpaper. I'm also going to touch up these edges just a little bit to remove some of the old adhesives, because one thing that a lot of people say when they just need their soles or heels re-glued, it's one of those things that there's additional steps that need to be taken, and that involves removing some of the glue, the old factory adhesive or whatever glue you may have used, and taking that extra step will actually secure the bonding between the two materials a little bit better. Where if you just slap some glue on there and push it together, it'll hold, but it's going to give out a lot quicker because you've got multiple layers of glue, and you don't know what was the first layer of glue from the factory being used exactly either. So too much glue is a bad thing sometimes. Okay, peel up some of that. Alright, grab the air compressor. It's going to get a little noisy. Oops, got the camera caught on there. Alright, there we go. So it's a little bit less lumpy and everything like that, no edges. And at this point we're going to go ahead and actually use some adhesive, put a thin layer in here. We're going to use the same stuff again. We like the chemical reaction to occur because it secures it a little bit better. And then we're going to put it onto one of our presses. It's actually called a heel wheel, and I'll let you check out what that looks like. But first things first, I need to set up that heel wheel, get this on there, and kind of do this quick because that chemical reaction occurring, we don't want this to happen while I'm taking my time. We want it to all be done very quickly. So let me get that set up for you real quick. Alright everyone, so we're over at a heel wheel here. Basically this is going to go on here with an attachment piece going over top of the heel. This one right here, a nice metal one with some felt cushioning material, and then this will give great equal distribution pressure around the whole entire heel base. And then once that's all on there, this arm right here is going to go down and press it and hold it in place for just a little while that adhesive settles in and cures completely, and then it holds it in place very well. Obviously we're still going to add some screws back in there, but this will at least get it all positioned and seal it up nicely all around. So let's go ahead and do that again. I have to do it a little quickly, but I'll let you check it out. So put a thin coat all around here. Underneath there. Looks like there's one little spot that's coming unglued there. Wipe that up. These heel wheels can also run nails into the heel base. Some brands of shoes, they actually, instead of using screws, will use nails. Now, unfortunately, that's not a good thing, but sometimes kind of have no choice but to do the same thing because of the way the shoes are designed. Thankfully, this is not the case with this shoe, and we are going to be doing it the proper way with a set of screws. So now this is sitting on here. I've got it locked. It's going to be holding in place for a good little while. Now we're just going to leave it and sit here for just probably about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll finally be able to switch back over to the workbench and continue on. So we'll see you back in just a minute. Alright everyone, so we've got this all secured nicely, at least with the adhesive for now. So this thing will hold up very well on its own, but again, we still got to make sure we add the screws in that are going to hold it down nicely. Now these are self-tapping stainless steel 3/4 inch screws. They are designed to really you know, get in there, and then they have like these jagged little edges here on the screw that will really kind of bite down on the materials nicely, where this one's kind of just a bit smoother, and the length is just a little bit longer. Again, not much, but just enough where it'll give it extra reinforcement. So go ahead and get them in here. Make sure I'm going nice and slow. Okay. Okay. Alright, may have to drill down just a little bit to make sure that it sits nice and flush, because the heads on these are a little bit wider. Self-tapping ones usually go in very well, but sometimes it gives a little extra help to drill it out some, because the heads, as you can see, are different sizes for sure. So we're going to drill it out to make sure that it really sits in there nicely. It looks like they use a harder material inside here, and I was thinking that it would sit in there beautifully, but sometimes you gotta drill it. It's a lot better than what we used to have to do. We really had to, drill these things out back in the day, and that was frustrating. It was very challenging to do, but with new innovative types of materials and screws and everything these days, it makes life a heck of a lot easier and more cost effective at this point to do. So let me go ahead and drill these out just a little bit, and that way the screw heads will sit in there nice and flush. Alright everyone, so we've got everything glued up. It's on there really nice and secure, but still have to make sure we run the screws in. Now, typically we like to replace these screws. However, this company has used a steel shank inside that's kind of built into the base, and at this point only their own screws will fit it properly. We can find replacements, but they're always off just a tiny bit, where they're not going to sit in the way we want it to. So we are going to have to reuse these. Thankfully, none of these screws are damaged or anything like that, but if they were damaged, sometimes that happens. We really have to basically readjust the interior of this boot to accommodate the replacements, and we don't want to do that. But all right, there's one. Two. Let's tighten down just a little bit more, and three. Beautiful. Got all three of them. Don't know if the camera's catching that, but there you go. Got the three screws in there. This thing is really on here now. So at this point we're gonna put everything back together. Get just a little bit of glue on that little felt piece. Well, might be again fiberglass. Really looks like fiberglass mostly. Get the drill out of the way. Glue that back over top. Back into the same spot it was at, and re-glue the insoles. It's always a challenge trying to get down in here with the brush. Just a tiny dab right there. I want to make sure none of that's left behind. And while this adhesive is still wet, glue that back in there because we don't need a double glue or anything like that. On insoles, they're thin and only need one coat of glue just on one side. There we go, got that glued up. Now just a matter of cleaning up and wiping up some of these edges. Again, it's hard seeing inside of a pair of boots, especially, and the taller they are, the even harder it is to see. So sometimes there might be a little tiny dab of glue and gets cleaned up. There we go. Well, that's clean. That's just gonna sit there and dry now at this point, and we're about done. All right, so we're done at this point. Just some minor cleaning up, and that was it. Again, there are a number of different types of ladies' heels out there, different builds, different styles. Like I'd mentioned, some companies will sometimes use nails and run that through. Sometimes they'll use 1 screw, 2 screws, 3, or even 4 screws. I haven't seen 5 yet, and I hope I don't, because that just seems way too much for a heel like this, for example. That's just way too much. That's overkill at that point. But other companies, especially again some of the cheaper ones, they use a staple in there. It's like an oversized, like fat staple. That's the width of it itself, and it has 4 prongs, and those are the worst because they always snap all the time. They're always snapped, and it involves having to drill it out. So kind of one of those things that I want to always mention to all the ladies out there. Typically, the cheaper the shoe is, the more expensive the repair job will end up being down the road, because those companies really design them in such a way that once they're broken, once they're worn out, they are designed to be tossed, and you end up buying a new pair. Well, a nicer pair of boots like these ones, for example, they use the screws in there, and that really helps a lot to be able to actually repair and fix them. Now obviously we had to reuse the original screws, and there's nothing wrong with them. They held up fine, they're still holding up fine. Typically we like to replace the screws with our own, but can't always have that sometimes, and you know, we were able to save these, and now they can be worn again because she hasn't really even worn them that much. I mean, the heel, look at that, that's still the original factory heel, barely has anything there. That sole, all that. And again, accidents happen. That's why it's so hard for us to be able to predict what happens. If we end up just replacing this little heel here, the dowel pin is what they're called, you can end up putting them on at the shop, walk out the door, and step into a crack, and the whole thing could end up getting torn out. It's just one of those things that ladies' shoes are very beautiful, very nice looking, but they are delicate. There are certain aspects about a lady's shoe that it just won't hold up in certain scenarios. So always keep that in mind, ladies. If you have a habit of resting your heel like this on the ground and just kind of twirling it around like that, or on your toes, you're gonna cause some kind of damage. The toe will definitely end up getting worn out. It may end up getting pulled up, which looks like this one's a little bit pulled up there. So we're gonna touch that up for her as well, so that that stays intact. But the main job, which is the heel here, is all taken care of. It's not going to come off, it's not going to, you know, fall apart or anything. It's going to hold up for a good while. But again, if she does the same scenario where she digs her heel into the ground like that and twirls it, or just smacks that heel, there could be a number of things that can go wrong. At least it wasn't this that snapped, the heel base itself. If the heel base snaps, not too much we can do at that point. But this gives you an idea of at least one of the options that can be fixed. Always, we recommend that if you have any questions, you're not sure if your heel can be fixed or replaced or anything like that, if you're local, we recommend that you stop by and let us see it in person. If you're not local, at the very least, send us some pictures, and we'll be happy to try to help however we can and give recommendations or see what options we have for you and kind of take it from there. But otherwise, keep in mind, beautiful shoes, take good care of them, respect your shoes, and they'll take you for many miles. So don't forget to subscribe, hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video, and check out our website, CobblersPlus.com. We've been updating it, and more things are being added to there, such as ladies' heel replacements. So if you need it done, you saw what needs to be done to them, and if you know for sure that's the same process we're going to need to do, you can definitely find that in our services tabs under women's repairs, under women's shoes actually. And if you're not sure for, if that same service can be done on your shoes, take a picture, send it on over to our email. It's listed on our website, procobblers@gmail.com. Who knows, down the road that email address may be updated, but in the meantime, just check out CobblersPlus.com. Again, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.